Let's set the stage. Europe in the mid-14th century, bustling trade routes, merchants swapping spices, silks, and stories. And then, cue ominous drumroll, 12 ships sail into Sicily in October 1347. The locals, expecting exotic goods, instead find what looks like the world's worst Halloween party. Sailors either dead or barely clinging to life, their bodies decorated with grotesque boils oozing pus like some medieval horror show. The Sicilian authorities, in a rare moment of common sense, shout, "Nope," and send the ships away. Too late. The plague had already RSVP'd to Europe's grand banquet. Long before Europe's ports saw the dreaded death ships, whispers were already swirling like medieval gossip. Merchants trudging along the Silk Road didn't just carry spices and silks, they carried stories. Tales of a mysterious killer sweeping through China, India, Egypt, Persia, and Syria spread like wildfire. Imagine the medieval marketplace. One trader sells pepper, another sells silk, and a third leans in with wide eyes to whisper, "Did you hear? Entire towns are vanishing overnight." The disease seemed to follow trade routes like the world's worst hitchhiker, never paying for the ride, always leaving devastation in its wake. By the time these rumors reached Europe, people were already nervously side-eyeing their neighbors, wondering if the killer was coming for them next. Enter Yersinia pestis, a bacterium so tiny you couldn't see it, yet so dramatic it could have headlined a Shakespearean tragedy. It didn't travel alone. Oh no, it had a full entourage. Fleas were the couriers, hopping from host to host like deranged medieval messengers. Rats were the chauffeurs, scurrying through ships, barns, and homes, carrying fleas like unwanted passengers. Rats were the medieval roommates nobody could evict. They thrived in the damp, crumb-filled corners of ships and cities, multiplying faster than anyone could count. And wherever rats went, fleas followed, carrying Yersinia pestis like a VIP guest list to Europe's deadliest party. Here's where things get truly absurd. Medieval doctors, armed with robes, masks, and a whole lot of guesswork, believed the plague was spread by spirits of the dead. Yes, ghosts. Imagine thinking your neighbor's soul was infecting you as it floated by. In reality, the true culprits were far less mystical and far more itchy, fleas biting and hopping, lice crawling from person to person, possibly airborne droplets from coughs and sneezes. But medieval science wasn't exactly winning awards. Instead of microscopes, they had superstition. Instead of germ theory, they had bad air and angry spirits. And so, while Yersinia pestis laughed in microscopic glee, humanity stumbled blindly into catastrophe. Europe stood on the edge of disaster, armed only with rumors, rats, and bad theories. The whispers from afar weren't just gossip anymore, they were prophecy. The killer was coming, and the stage was set for one of history's darkest performances. Victims developed swollen lymph nodes, called buboes, in the groin or armpits. These lumps grew to the size of eggs, sometimes apples, turning blackish blue. They oozed fluids, accompanied by fever, chills, diarrhea, and pain. Death usually followed within days. Imagine waking up fine on Monday, and by Friday you're a corpse. That was the plague's efficiency. Invisible menace, people were contagious before showing symptoms, making isolation impossible. Urban rats, the true villains. Fleas on rats spread the disease like medieval Uber drivers of doom. Livestock casualties. Pigs, cows, chickens, goats, and sheep also died, leading to wool shortages. Even fashion suffered. Flight to the countryside. Those who fled cities found no safety. Nature itself was infected. Florence lost 90% of its population. Imagine a bustling city reduced to silence. Ghost towns. Thousands of villages vanished, reclaimed by forests, rediscovered centuries later by aerial photography after World War I. Death toll. Europe lost 50 to 70 million people, 30 to 60% of its population. Globally, 155 to 200 million perished, nearly half the world's population at the time. Ignorance. No one understood germs. Treatments ranged from bloodletting to prayer, neither of which impressed Yersinia pestis. Multiple transmission routes. Flea bites, lice, rats, possibly airborne sneezes. The plague was versatile. Trade routes. The disease followed commerce like a shadow, proving that globalization has always had its downsides. Here's the theory. Rats were the original plague party hosts. They carried the deadly bacterium Yersinia pestis like it was the hottest new accessory. But then, disaster struck for the rats. They started dying in droves, and when the rats fell, their fleas panicked. Imagine thousands of tiny bloodsuckers screaming, "Where's the buffet?" and leaping onto the nearest warm body, which just happened to be humans. Ships in the 1300s were basically floating rat hotels, dark, damp, crumb-filled paradise. Once the death ships docked in Sicily, the fleas spread like wildfire along trade routes, hitching rides to France, Spain, England, and even North Africa. The plague was now a global franchise. Fast forward to modern science, historians noticed something odd. Europe's Black Death spread much faster than rat-based models predicted. And curiously, there were no reports of mass rat die-offs before the plague hit. Enter the human flea theory. Human fleas and lice could bite one infected person, then hop to another nearby victim. Mathematical models showed this pattern matched 7 out of 9 plague-stricken cities, better than the rat flea model. Translation: it wasn't just rats, it was humanity's own lousy lice betraying them. Talk about backstabbing roommates. As if bubonic plague wasn't enough, archaeologists found anthrax spores in English plague graves. Yes, anthrax, another deadly disease crashing the party. Anthrax spreads through sweat, saliva, tears, or even casual skin contact. This meant people could catch a killer disease by basically existing. Some victims may have died from anthrax, others from plague, and many from both. It was the medieval version of buy one get one free, except the prize was death. Doctors tried their best, but their best was medieval nonsense. Bloodletting, slice open veins to balance the humors. Result: patients bled out faster than the plague could kill them. Boil lancing, pop the buboes like grotesque balloons. Result: contagious pus sprayed everywhere. Congratulations, you've just infected the room. Herbs, vinegar baths, rosewater dip. Spoiler: none of these worked. Eventually doctors quit, priests refused last rites, and Europe was left to fend for itself. It was survival of the luckiest. Nature wasn't kind either. Only 0.2% of Europeans had a gene that gave them resistance. The rest? Sitting ducks. Those who survived passed on their resistant genes, which is why today about 15% of Caucasian Americans have some plague immunity. A grim inheritance, but hey, better than nothing. From 12 rat-infested ships came a tidal wave of death that reshaped history. Between 50 to 70 million Europeans died, entire villages vanished, forests reclaimed ghost towns, and the world population shrank by nearly half. The Black Death wasn't just a pandemic. It was a cosmic punchline delivered by fleas, rats, and anthrax, with humanity as the butt of the joke. The Black Death wasn't just a disease, it was a chaotic symphony of rats dying, fleas rising, anthrax crashing the party, and medicine making everything worse. It was history's darkest comedy, where the punchline was death, and the audience had no choice but to play along. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share. Every follow helps grow this channel. See you in the next one.